Moving to our final speaker of the evening, we have Omarosa Manigault Newman. Omarosa Manigault Newman, often known mononymously as Omarosa, is an American reality TV show participant, writer, and former political aide to President Donald Trump. She was assistant to the president and director of communications for the Office of Public Liaison during the Trump administration between January and December 2017, and has since published Unhinged, a book detailing her time at the White House, criticizing Trump and his administration. Omarosa, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone. So good to be back at the Union. I wish, instead of being here in Florida, that I were there with you all, but so is the case with the state of the world. I am here to close out this debate, a very important debate with just 5 days before the American election, and certainly something that is on everyone's mind. Of course, I will be speaking from the opposition. This debate has taken an aim. It's an attempt to write the obituary to the concept, the idea of America the Beautiful, America the most powerful. And I'm here to just say, before you don your best Black suit in order to attend those services, just pump the brakes just one moment. Not so fast. Many have argued prior to me that America's supremacy has, in fact, declined. Now, of course, I'm here to demonstrate that that is just not the case. This is not the end of America as a global superpower, and it is, in fact, it's not the end, but I would argue that this is the beginning of a new chapter for America. Now, with that eloquent introduction, you're so right. I did serve in the White House for 1 year with Donald Trump. I have known him for 17 years. Prior to that, I served for President William Jefferson Clinton. So I have served in both a Republican White House and a Democratic White House. I have been in politics for 25 years. I come to this debate with a lot of insight about what the world thinks of our country, and a lot of insight about what America thinks of you. Powerful as this argument by my opponents have been about the decline of our country, I think it deserves a more rigorous examination. I think it's important that we measure the change in a nation's relative power. We have to do that with some basic indicators. I've listened to the critiques about my former boss, who is indeed off his rocker and unhinged, okay? I can tell you that from personal experience. But Donald Trump is not America. He does not represent the whole of our great nation. He represents just one page of a chapter of American history. And so if we look at the indicators, and I think those indicators are important, the size and the influence of our economy relative to other powers, the magnitude of military powers compared with that of our potential adversaries, and of course, the degree of political influence. If you look at these things, and particularly in context to how it wields its influence in the international system, all of which would make up what I have heard called the comprehensive national power of America. Now, we also have to think of the concept of time. The last 3 years, 3.5 years, has been truly a long 3.5 years, not just for America, but for the world, who has had an opportunity to laugh, to mock us, and truly just shake its head in disgust by the display seen coming out of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But if we think about a matter of time, judgments based on just a few years' evidence, it tends to be problematic. And I'll tell you why. A great power's decline is the product of fundamental changes in international distribution of various forms of power that usually occur over longer stretches of time, not just 3 or 4 years. I have to tell you that great powers rarely decline suddenly. Now, a war may bring them down, certainly, but even that is usually just a symptom. a culmination of a longer process. Now, did the fundamentals of America's relative power shift so dramatically in the last 3 to 4 years? We've seen a shift, but I would argue that that does not equate to the end. Now, let's start with the basics of indicators. In economic terms, and even despite the current year's political and pandemic woes, this recession that we're seeing around the globe, America's position in the world hasn't changed. Its share of the world's GDP has held remarkably steady, not only over the past decade, but over the past 4 decades. In fact, in 1969, the United States produced roughly a quarter of the world's economic output. Now, today, in 2020, it still produces roughly a quarter of the world's economic output. And it remains not only the largest, but also the richest economy in the world. Now, people are rightly mesmerized by the rise of other countries, and the nations who share the global economy has certainly climbed dramatically, right? But this has so far come almost entirely at the expense of, guess who? Of Europe, which has had a declining share of the global economy. Now, it's also reasonable to expect that other nations will, as in the past, run into its own difficulties. So we must proceed cautiously while pointing one finger at one nation and saying its decline is imminent without examining your own. Success in the past does not guarantee success in the future, but nothing, not just one thing, nothing seems clearer than examining historical evidence. The American system, for all of its difficult qualities, has shown a great capacity to adapt and recover from difficulties, much more than many other nations, including many of its geopolitical competitors. This undoubtedly has something to do with the relative freedom of American society, which rewards innovators. Often it has allowed outside existing power structures, but it does reward innovators for producing new ways of doing things, and with relatively open political systems, sometimes difficult, we've seen that, which allows movements to gain steam and to influence the behaviors of political establishments. We've seen the rise of Black Lives Matter. Of course, we saw the video mentioned by the previous speaker of George Floyd. And even with all of the difficulties, racial divide, challenges, 200,000 Americans dying, America, as we look at it now, is not in an inferior position, but is poised to direct the world in the next chapter and moving into the future. The America system at times, have to acknowledge, it certainly is slow to evolve. In part, it's because the founders designed it that way, with a federal structure which checks and balances, a written constitution, Bill of Rights, and a system that possesses a remarkable ability to undertake challenges and undertake changes just when it seems like the kettle is about to pop. There are critical elections like the one we face on Tuesday, November the 3rd. Now, these critical elections allow transformations to occur, providing new political solutions to problems that seem very difficult to solve. And of course, there are no guarantees. I am hoping that my fellow graduate of Howard University, a proud, beautiful woman of color, will make history and become vice president of these great United States. And Senator Joe Biden, former vice president of this country, will become president, but there are no guarantees. Issues throughout history, Americans have found a way of achieving and implementing change and national consensus. So, in conclusion, the one main reason that the Americans have the ability to overcome crisis after crisis, dire prediction of its end and its decline, it's because America has reacted strongly to the debate about the decline by taking decisive action cutting costs, making companies leaner and meaning, investing in new technologies, promoting communications revolution, trimming government's deficit, all of this by adjusting, by pivoting so that it can survive on a global scale. So I'm here to say and appeal to you to take the position that you and I should all share. As much as we'd like to continue to read about the decline of America, to continue to write the obituary of the end of this great superpower, I am here to tell you that Tuesday, November the 3rd, is a new day, a new dawn, and a new beginning. It is the start of something remarkable, but we will resume and continue to be the great superpower that we are. I stand in total support of this country, even in the midst of my former boss' crazy displays of ignorance, bigotry, racism, and misogyny. This country stands alone in the fact that it will continue to be great now and into the future. I thank you so much for this opportunity to address the union again.